China recognizes that it can engage in one-for-one tit-for-tat retaliation on tariffs. So the United States, I think if you look at the figures last year, we imported roughly, I think it was $505 billion worth of Chinese goods. China imported roughly $130 billion of American goods. So if you just do tit for tat, at some point China's options are going to run out much faster. And so China realizes, okay, well, I'm going to soon run up against the limits for what I can do in terms of one-for-one retaliation. Are there other ways, sort of asymmetric ways in which I can retaliate? And it's interesting that the tariffs that they have imposed have been targeted at, as you mentioned soybean farmers, they've been targeted at the agricultural and industrial heartland. And those are constituencies that have been disproportionately important to when Donald Trump was a candidate. They were very important to his gaining momentum, and as a president, they've been core to his base. So China is designing its retaliatory strategies with American domestic sensitivities in mind. Just as a broader note on, you mentioned the notion of a growing Cold War with China and reference trade. What worries me about the trade war is that it's actually something of a misnomer to call it a trade war, because what's really at stake is not deficit figures. What's at stake is competition over the commanding heights of frontier technologies. And so trade and trade imbalances are a proxy for that. But what we're seeing right now is that the United States and China, they had taken for granted for a long time, and the foreign policy establishment had taken for granted, in this country had taken for granted for a long time, that deepening economic interdependence between the United States and China was good. It brings the two countries together, and given that because outside of trade, there aren't really that many organic forces that bring the two countries together. Trade interdependence has been a very crucial force bringing the two countries together. My concern is that if the two countries economically begin to decouple, what are then the stabilizing forces for the relationship? And if you want to talk about issues that would really affect not only stability in the Asia-Pacific, but global stability, and begin to have then, I think, effects on Americans, I do think that a permanent or even sort of protracted economic decoupling between the two countries could hurt Americans' pocketbooks big time.